and share our screen. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Brian. My co-host someplace is Brian as well, and this is Civil Chat. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So if you're not familiar with Civil Chat, basically what we do is we sit here and we take questions from y'all and we answer them the best we can. You can ask questions on pretty much anything you want, but I will focus on questions about Autodesk civil engineering software. So Civil 3D, Revit, not Revit. Brian can answer the Revit, but go to his Revit radio later for that. Civil 3D recap is what I was trying to say. Let's see, InfraWorks, Map 3D, Subassembly Composer. You can ask me about the H&H tools. I know about the old ones. I don't know the Innovyze ones at all, so I just never got into those. But yeah, ask any questions you like. The topics are completely up to y'all. If you don't ask questions, we'll just sit and talk about Brian's trip to San Diego, because that's where he is right now. And yeah, so I always like to start off with something that I just kind of do. So I thought today I would talk a little bit about offset alignment, see if anybody's using those. So let's see, we'll go create a new drawing here. And if you're not familiar with offset alignments,
you're sharing the wrong screen. We're seeing your background with only an AutoCAD icon.
Oh, wrong screen. Thank you. Share.
While you're doing that, setting that up, just for those, since you did say people could ask you Map 3D questions, but for those you didn't know it, there was a Map 3D update yesterday for 2023.
Okay. I did not know it.
And an AutoCAD 24 update.
Yeah, there's all sorts
29th. Yeah, there's a lot of updates in the last couple of weeks. So if you haven't looked at your updates lately, jump in there and go look.
And you know, just about anytime you think about it, there's an update for Desktop Connector. So
I'm sure there will be one before you finish.
Probably. All right, so you should be able to see my screen now.
Yep, much better. Or the proper screen, at least.
Okay, awesome. All right, so like I said, I was going to talk a bit about alignment, offset alignment. So I don't know, let's see, let's open up so you can go program files. I'm just going to open up one of the tutorial files. Autodesk, AutoCAD 2024, Civil 3D, help, Civil tutorials, drawings, and we'll go alignment. I don't know which one alignment do I want. We'll just go with this one here. Sure, why not? Not super familiar with this drawing, but it's a drawing that has an alignment in it. Offset alignments are great. So there's two different things you can do. So, you know, I've got my center line of my whatever here. So I'm going to go with a road, and I want to get my edge of asphalt. So there's a couple of different ways you can get your edge of asphalt. You can either offset your alignment, or you can create an offset alignment. Those are two different things. So you can just use the offset command on an alignment. So I'm just going to do O for offset. Let's see. All right, just using O for offset. Distance, I don't know, say a 14-foot wide lane, and then I select the alignment and I pick the side I'm going to go to, and it creates a line offset from the alignment. So this is actually just a polyline. Looks like there were some spirals in here, so we get some fun polyline segments in here, but it's just a polyline, and then you can do anything with this polyline that you want. One thing to note is if this alignment changes, that polyline doesn't care. It's just a polyline, nothing special about it at all. All right, so that's offsetting an alignment, but we can also create an offset alignment. The way I like to do this, and this is kind of true for just about anything in Civil 3D. If you want to do something to a thing, select it and look at the rivet. So for this alignment, I want to create offset alignment. So I select it, and up here on the ribbon, I can create offset alignments. All right, so I choose offset alignments. And then which alignment do you want to create the offsets for? And how do you want to name the alignments? So right now it's going to take the parent alignment name, which in this tutorial drawing was horribly named, alignment 1. It's going to tell which side and then the offset distance. And if you want, you can click on this little icon here to come in and change this. So the different properties that you have is the side, the parent alignment name, the offset distance, and a counter. But there you go. Do you want to do this from the very beginning of the alignment to the very end of the alignment? So from start to end. If not, uncheck it. You can type in the value, or you can pick it on the screen, say, hey, I want to start right there. In this case, I'm just going to do from start to end. How many offsets left and how many offsets right do you want to create? You can't just go in and say, hey, I want one at 14 feet and then 16 feet and then 16 and a half feet to do your curb and gutter, right? You would just say, hey, I want to do 3, and then what increment do you want to do it at? So if you do 10, you're going to get one at 10 feet, one at 20 feet, and one at 30 feet. If you do 5, you get one at 5, 10, and 15, et cetera. And then you could have to come back and adjust them after the fact. Alternatively, you could just run the command 3 times to get those 3 offsets. So in this example, I'm just going to do 1 and 15 feet. Sure, that's good. So I'm going to do it on the left and on the right. If you only want it on one side, you just set one of these to 0. Down below, what site do you want to put these offset alignments in? My recommendation, don't put alignments in a site. The only time you'd want to put an alignment in a site is if you want it to subdivide parcels. So I don't want these to subdivide a parcel, so I'm not going to put it in a site. And then you choose your alignment style, alignment labels. You also have this option for a widening criteria. So we have curves, and what you can do is you can add a widening around the curve. So some places require that the inside of the curve be wider than the rest of the roadway. And so you can add widenings through it. You've got the inside only, you could do it outside only, both sides. And you got some options here. This is not something I've done a whole lot of, but I just know that it's an option. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just doing a road. And then you can also use a design check set. I'm not interested in a design check set, so I'm going to uncheck that. And then last, we have to create the offset profile. So if your alignment has a profile, you can create an offset profile for the offset alignment. And it'll be set at a specific slope from that offset alignment or from that profile down 2% to it. You can there's options here. But I'm going to focus on the alignments themselves. So I'm going to select OK. And I get my offset alignments. Now it put labels on these. I really don't care about the labels, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of these labels. I should have set that up when I created it, but now I have my offset alignments. And unlike the polyline, if the parent alignment changes, the offset alignments go along for the ride, which is really cool. So you can use this as a target for your corridor. So let's say you've got a road and you have a pedestrian crossing through here, and you want to narrow the road down at the pedestrian crossing to do some traffic calming, right? And you want your curb and gutter to follow along that narrowing, that traffic, that neck down. And so you can add widenings to your offsets. So if you just want to change the offset, you can grab this little triangle grip here, and this is going to be like in the midpoint of the alignment. So if you're zoomed in over here and you select it, you won't see the grip. You have to zoom out until you can see it. And you can simply click on this, and if you've got your dynamic input turned on, you can just type in the new distance. So I say I want this to be, 20 feet, and now it's got an offset of 20 feet. I'll change that back to 15 feet. Oh, I don't have hang on, my drafting settings is not set correctly. Give me a second. I don't have the dimension input turned on. So I can type 15, it sets it to 15 feet, 20, etc. So I'll change that back to 15. You can also add a widening. So this is more of a manual adding the widening. It's going to add it right there at that point, and you're just now going to get an offset. So I don't use that one a whole lot. So instead, what I do, I'm just going to undo here. If I want to add in a widening, I'm going to select the offset alignment. Again, this is what I do. I select the object that I want to do something to, and I look at the ribbon. Up here on the ribbon, I have the option to add a widening. So I'm going to choose add widening. It's going to ask you, do you want to create the widening as a new alignment or not? So in this case, I'm going to choose no. So if I choose no, it's just simply going to edit the alignment that I have, this offset alignment. If I choose yes, it's going to leave that offset alignment alone, and it's going to create a new alignment that is the widening. So in this case, I'm going to choose no. It's going to ask, where do you want to start? So I want my widening to start, I don't know, about 10. You can type in the station if you want to. I'm just going to eyeball it, about 10 plus 0, 0. And I want it to end around, I don't know, 11 plus 0, 0. So about 100 feet long. And then it's going to ask for the widening offset. So this is the offset from the center line alignment. Because I want it to come in, I'm going to set it to, say, 10 feet. And you can see how it narrows down in there for me. Now, as soon as I hit enter, it brings up the offset alignment parameters. So this is your widening. So my widening parameters, so I've got an offset of 10 feet. If I want to, I can change that to say 5 feet, shrinks it down. I can change it up to, maybe I need to widen it out for some parking. Maybe I'll make it, 30 feet, pushes it out. But I'm going to bring it back down to 10. And I could do the same thing on the opposite side if I wanted to. I can type in the start station, the end station, the length, and then I get these different transition types. So right now it's set to linear. So it's coming along. At this point, it's simply going to do a straight change from here to here. So there's an angle point here, and there's an angle point here. And this is the transition in, right? I also have the transition out, which is at the other end. So I can change that transition as well. So instead of linear, I'm going to do a curve, line, curve. And so now I have a transition length and my curve 1 radius and my curve 2 radius. So it's putting a curve and then a straight line and then a curve, and then it's going into that transition. You can also do a curve reverse curve. So it puts in, 2 curves. So it smooths it out a little bit. All sorts of fun things. You can change that transition length, however you want to do it. So I'm just going to do a curve reverse. I'll do a curve line curve. And I don't know, we'll set this, say, to 50 and that to 50 as well. Maybe change the transition to 50 feet. All right, just so we can see this a little bit better. So you can see we're coming in, putting a curve, a straight line, and then a curve, and then we're coming out. And then you can do the same thing on the other end. So I canceled out of that. I've got the offset alignment. I can go back in my add widening. No, that's not it. Right click. Offset parameters. That's it. So you can select it. Right. There it is. No, that's the offset profile. Anyways, so I just grab the alignments, right click, and then I go into the where was it? Edit offset parameters, and that brings that up again. And then I can change it for the transition out as well. Do the same parameters that I did for the in. So we'll do a curve line curve. Transition length will be 50 feet. And it'll do 50-foot curves. Excuse me. And then again, like I said, you can do this on the other side. So now I've got this neck down. Maybe it's too wide. I can just grab these grips and adjust them as needed. And you can see that transition stays where it was. And if these were corridor or targets for a corridor, the corridor would update as I make these changes, which is just kind of cool. Right. And again, if the parent alignment changes, all the offsets go along for the ride.
So Mike says he uses offset alignments all the time, but finds it difficult to use the widening on complex alignments.
Yeah, I'm sure it can be. So it's great for simple things like this, where you're just narrowing down and then coming back out. If you're transitioning from, I've got one part of the road that's got rollover curb and gutter and another part of the road that's got, vertical curb and gutter, and the cross pan is different, and you're using that edge of asphalt as the target for your lane, then your widths are going to change, and you can use offset alignments for things like that. They've got a lot of potential. One of the nice things is, instead of creating a whole bunch of regions for corridors and say, hey, I want to target this line, and I want to target this line, then I want to target this line for different widths for your roads, you can just create an offset alignment that has those different widths, have one region that targets that offset alignment, and really that's all you need in some cases. Other cases, it's a little bit more complex, as it said.
And Brian asks, do you use offset alignments for targeting in intersections, or do you use intersections?
Ooh, intersection, that's a completely different topic, but so let me show you what I do for intersection. So the intersection tool, which uses offset alignments. All right, let me open up a drawing here. Let's see, I want to go to, open up this drawing. So the intersection tool that comes with Civil 3D is a fantastic tool for creating intersections, provided the intersection is a simple intersection. It's not a complex intersection. What makes an intersection a complex intersection? Well, a crossband. So as you can see down here, I've got this crossband. So I think in other parts of the world, they don't use crossbans very often, but we have a concrete pan at the intersection. So the primary road is running through here, and then we have this pan for the water to go down the curb and gutter, and it's concrete, and it's wider, and it's narrow, it's flatter, and transitions. This makes an intersection a complex intersection. So I would not use the intersection tools in a situation like this. The intersection tools work great for situations like this. Now, let's see, can I just freeze those? Yeah, there we go. All right. So this is a very simple intersection. This one isn't even a crown road, it's a planar road, but it's just a really simple road intersection. There's no pans, it's just the curb and gutter turns, and there you go. So I would use the intersection tool for something like this. For something like this, I would use the corridor as much as I could. So if you notice in this area here, I don't have the sidewalk and the curb and gutter on the north side of the street, but I do on the south side of the street. And this other road comes in and stops right here. And then I would just use feature lines to grade in this area, because trying to model that using a corridor would just be mind-numbingly difficult, right? But throw some feature lines in here and you're good to go. I think I have an example of that. Yeah, so for example, I threw feature lines. I don't think these feature lines are actually part of the surface. Let's go ahead and add those. Let's see. Just do this. There we go. Oops, grab something that I shouldn't have. Let's try that one more time. Let's just do this. There we go. So this is not a real design. This is just something that I play around with. So don't think this was actually built this way. But you come through, add your feature lines in. You can add them directly to the corridor surface, or you can create a surface by itself and then paste that into another surface along with the corridor surface. There's lots of different options. But for example, this little traffic circle here, there's no way I would try to model that with a corridor or offset alignments. Offset alignments, maybe there's this corridor, this traffic circle over here. This might be a good spot. I don't know. I don't know if you could do an offset alignment to model that or not. But here's an example of that narrowing. This is a great spot just to use those offset alignments, because you have just one offset alignment for the entire length. It widens out for the elbow, for the eyebrow here, for the eyebrow here. There's another neck down here. It transitions to different widths. We've got more traffic coming through here. So this would be a good spot to possibly use an offset alignment to, as targets for a corridor. So hopefully that helps. Does that help answer the question, Brian? Awesome. Mike, Mike says that he's using the intersection tool because it caused a major glitch several years ago. Maybe I should try again. You could try again. It's still the same tool. I don't think there's been any improvement on it. Like I said, for simple intersections, it works great. Almost none of these intersections that I have on this project are simple intersections. The only place I use the intersection tools was up here on these little, I don't even know what you want to call these courts. that have these really simple designs. That's the only place that I use the intersection tools on this entire project. And that's the only place I would have, because they just don't work for most of the other cases. But yeah,
Cool.
you can use offset alignments to help you design your intersections for sure.
We only have one question currently, so we're waiting for more people to step up and put a question in there. But in the meantime, we'll go over that one. And Sean writes, please go over how to label spot elevations, for instance, on a curb such as TOC, FL, EP, and Civil 3D. And please show how to make expressions in labeling.
Sure. So there's a couple of options here. So it sounds, Sean, it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, you want a label that has the top of the curve, the flow line, and the existing edge of pavement. Does that sound correct? Or do you want separate labels for each one of those? Altogether. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so this isn't too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and throw. So basically, what I want to do is I want to put a spot elevation on the flow line of this road, and I want it to tell me what the flow line elevation is, the top of curb, and the edge of pavement elevation, all within one label. So we're going to have to use expressions for this, and this is a great example of using expressions. So I'm going to come over to the settings tab, surface, label styles, spot elevation, right? So I need to create a style that displays the information I want, but I also need an expression to do the math. So expressions take numbers and make them into other numbers. That's all they do. It just does math. You can't do if statements, you can't do and or statements or anything like that within an expression. It just takes numbers and creates other numbers. You can use you can use if statements within it, but it still has to output a number, right? So I need two expressions. I needed one expression that goes from the flow line to the top of curb, and then another one that goes from the flow line to the edge of asphalt. So I'm going to assume a 6-inch curb and gutter, so 6-inch depth, and then a 2-inch pan. So the pan is going to be 2 inches deep, and the curb is going to be 6 inches tall. So I want to add 6 inches to the flow line to get your top of curb, and I want to add 2 inches to get the edge of asphalt from the flow line. So that's what I'm going to do. So I need those two expressions. So I'm going to right click on expressions. I'll choose new, and I'll give it a name. So I'll call this one TOC. So this is the top of curb. And then in the description, tell people what this is, right? Because you might end up not working on this job in the future, and somebody else will have to come in and figure out your stuff. So this will be a add 6 inches to the spot elevation flow line to calc top of curb, or something along those lines, right? And again, this just helps people in the future. You just be nice to people in the future. And then we have the expression. This is where you do the math. And so what I want to do is I want to take the elevation that was at the spot that was selected and add 6 inches to it, right? So over here, you have the different properties for this expression. And to the right of that, you have the functions that you can do, right? So these are the elevations. So I can get the surface easting, the surface northing, the longitude, latitude. But the one I'm interested in for this is the surface elevation. So I choose surface elevation, and then I want to add 6 inches to it, or half a foot, right? So it's going to be plus 0.5. The result, how do you want this to be formatted? So when you go into your label style composer and you add a property into the label, if you're doing an alignment and you're trying to get the station value, you have different properties in the label when you're editing the label than you do if it's an elevation or a length. And so this is basically you telling the expression, hey, you represent this thing. And so you'll have those properties for it when you get into adding it into the label style. So in this case, it's an elevation. So I choose elevation, and that's all there is to it. Choose OK. And now when I choose expressions here, you can see I have the expression down here. And this is now able to be used in the style. So I'm going to do this one more time. I'll choose new. I'm going to do, this is going to be the edge of pavement, put in a good description. I'm going to skip it for this time. And this is then now going to be the surface elevation. And this is gonna be 2 inches, so I'm just gonna put in 2/12. Alright. And again, I'm gonna label that, you know what, let me go ahead and leave this as a double. Just, I don't know if there's any difference between elevation and double, but let's see. Yeah. Okay, you can always come back and change. I think you can change that after the fact, can't you? If I edit the expression, yeah, I can always change it after the fact. So now I need a label. So I'm just gonna go create a brand new spot elevation label here. I will call this one curb total. And then we'll go to the layout. And in the context, we've got all the elevations here. Let me do something here real quick so it's easier to see. I'm just going to change the font that the style is using. We'll use Arial. It just makes it easier to see on the screen. There we go. So it just makes this easier to read. So I'm just going to get rid of everything up here. And so I want those 3 things. I want the top of curb, flow line, and edge of asphalt. So I'll do a TOC colon space, and then I can add in my top of curb. So this is that expression that we just created. And here are all those parameters. So as you can see, it's the same parameters that you get if you were using just any other elevation. So I'm going to set this to the 100th, and everything else is good. Hit the silly little unlabeled white arrow to actually add that in. And then we'll go down to the next line. So that was top of curb. This is going to be flow line. All right. And this is just going to be the surface elevation because that's the spot that I'm labeling. All right. And then we'll do edge of pavement. And that will be the EP. And so you can see this is a little different than if I do the top of curb, right? Because they have, you know, one's a double and the other one's an elevation. In this case, they're really similar. I'm not worried about it. All right, select OK. And then I have, now, unfortunately, as you can see, it's center justified. I don't want it to be center justified. I want it to be left justified. So that's going to be found underneath the format over here. So you can see there's 2 tabs over here. So rather than being center justified, I'm going to make it left justified. Everything else looks good. Select OK and OK. And now I can add that label in. So we'll go to the annotate tab, add labels, surface, spot elevation. Right, there's my curb total. Choose add, select the surface, select where I want its label. And there it is. So as you can see, the top of curb is 6 inches above the flow line, and the edge of pavement is 2 inches above the flow line as well. Now, what if we change curb type? So we're no longer using, maybe instead of 6-inch curb, we're now going to go to 8-inch curb. Well, all I have to do is edit the expression. All right, so I'll go down to my expressions, right click on the top of curb, edit the expression, and instead of adding 0.5, we'll add in 8/12. So OK. Regen. And you can see that number has now updated to be 8 inches above instead of 6 inches above. So Sean, hopefully that answered the question for you. Let me know.
Thomas says he just labels all of his Brian 1, Brian 2, Brian 3. So he gives them a description.
Right.
Yeah. And Sean says that's great. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, expressions are awesome. If you go to my blog, which is Civil 3D Plus, it's a WordPress blog, I've got a whole section on expressions. So I've done a lot on using expressions in Civil 3D. There's a lot you can do with them.
Brian says I can extend on this one. Let's say I don't want to see the 51 in quotes. Do you have an expression to remove those?
So you just want it to be, instead of 5176.89, you just want it to be 76.89. Absolutely. I'm just going to show you the expression. I'm not actually going to use it here. Right. So the expression, let's see if I can remember what it would be. So it would be the surface elevation. Oops.
Thomas says, but if you do this, then you're moving to Seattle.
Right, surface elevation minus, and I want to get just the 5,100. And so I'm going to take the elevation, divide it by 100, truncate it, and then multiply it by 100. All right, so it's going to be the surface elevation again. All right, divided by 100. So that gives me 51.7689. I'm then going to truncate that. So I'm going to use an expression of truncate, which just drops the decimal. All right, so that's truncated, and then I'm going to multiply it by 100. So I take the surface elevation, 5176.89, divided by 100, we get 51.7689. I truncate it, which gives us 51. I multiply it by 100, which gives us 5,100, and then I subtract that from the original elevation. And I'll go ahead and show this. Oh, I need to give it a name. Hundreds. No. We'll go with Brian 1. All right, so I'll just go ahead and put that in here real quick. So I'll replace the flow line with that new expression. And you can see, ooh, I did something wrong. Again, just edit the expression. Maybe I need to put parentheses on this.
Easting. Use surface easting, not surface elevation.
Oh, is that what I did? Thank you.
Don't think me, think Corey and Thad.
It does make a difference. Property, surface, elevation. There we go. 76.22 instead of 5176.22. But yeah, absolutely, we can do that. All right, what else we got, Brian?
Thomas said when you had the negative number, that just means you moved from Seattle to hell. So,
right.
So Greg got a two-part question here. He says, an engineer at work has started to request that all of our grading plans contain a lot of horizontal control type of labels, like the spot elevation, also containing the northing, easting, and description. It's clutter the drawings, and I hate working in them because it's just too busy. Does anyone else do this for their grading plans? And is this normal for civil drawings? He then also says, does anybody have a good resource for the civil drawings and what they should contain in a proper method for labels? Because he's trying to, justify that the other people are wrong. He didn't say that. That's me paraphrasing.
Right.
Yeah.
I've never seen it where for every spot elevation has an elevation, a northing and easting. It depends upon what it is you're trying to do with the spot elevations. So we typically had a horizontal control drawing and then a grading drawing. So the horizontal control drawing would lay out the locations of the features. And then in the grading drawing, it would then label the elevations of those features. Right. So that's the way we've always done it. I don't know. Does anybody else have good thoughts on this?
Yeah, Thad said you fire the PE who's asking for it.
The PE. Yeah, I've never
Max
seen
says,
that before.
how about using tables?
Yeah, you could use tables. That would be a way to clean it up. You would probably want to use points for those rather than spot elevations. Problem with that is if the surface changes, you have to remember to go update the point. There's no way that I know of to put surface labels into a table. Would be nice. Yeah, I mean, the engineer is the one that's going to stamp it. So, it's up to them to determine how they want their drawing to look or what information they want on their drawing.
Thomas says Kogo point table.
Right.
And he says, at least that's what it says, a surveyor, best practice per surveyor. And then Tina actually said grid to show northing and easting and then just spot elevations.
Yeah, you could do that. The problem is, I've got you know, a parking lot that has islands in it, and I need to make sure that those islands get built in the right location. So I would have a horizontal control plan that says, this is the northing and easting of this point on the island, and then these are the bearings and distances that go around it. And then on a different drawing, I would then have the grading that says, these are the spot elevations for those locations. Again, that's the way I've done it in the past, but, you know. But if you
And
need
John
that
says,
all to be on the same drawing, I think the Cocoa Point table would probably be the best way to do
Thomas put a frowny face on grids because they use interpolated elevations.
it. Interpolated.
I read what's spelled.
Yeah.
And since Tom made a spelling comment earlier, I had to give him crap on that. And then add point groups as an alternate use.
Yeah.
And John also says point tables have allowed me to hack together useful stuff. Although if you're trying to sell this to the PE, I don't think using the word hack is a good description.
North Korea.
No, that'd be putting balloons of trash over you, Tom.
Yeah, Max says, you know, you might just need to create more sheets at a smaller scale. All right. Anything else?
And Greg just
What else we got?
followed up, says, looks like you guys are all sharing my pain. We do have horizontal control point plans and site plans that cover all of this, but it's just one guy demanding this. So again, I think you go back to Thad, just fire him.
Yeah, no, he's good.
Okay. All right. So Mike came up with, from all your years of using Civil 3D, where is the most amount of time spent while working on drawings, and what is the biggest time saver you have found?
There's the most amount of time spent most working on drawings, and what is the biggest time saver? The most time spent rebooting after crashes.
After crashes.
So this is an area where I don't have a whole lot of experience. I've never, or I shouldn't say never, I very rarely I never got a chance to design in Civil 3D. So I worked for a company for 8 years, and right out of school, I got my PE, I did designs, and I worked at Land Desktop. The company I was going with decided they didn't want to make the change to Land Desktop, so I left and ended up in an Autodesk reseller where I didn't do sheets and projects and things like that. And then when I got done there, I now at GEI where I'm the CAD manager. So again, I don't spend a lot of time working on projects and creating sheets and things like that. So this is not a question that I'm very qualified to answer. I always like to tell people that I'm not a drafter. I can make CAD and Civil 3D sing, but you know, making things look good is a skill set that I don't have. So I'm going to put this out to the group. What do y'all think? What is the most time consuming part of doing a set of construction drawings? And what have you found to be a good way to minimize the time spent on that?
Scott put hands down, styles are the biggest time saver in a set of civil drawings.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So if you get your style set up correctly prior to doing any of the work, yeah, that's a huge time saver. That's why we have our template that has all of our styles in it. We have all our text styles, dimension styles, everything already set up in a template. For sure. Absolutely.
Feature lines on curves, according to Thomas.
Feature lines on curves. Sean says making the finished contours look good. Yeah, I can see that. I wouldn't worry about the finished contours looking good until you get to the end, right? Because things are going to change. Things change, and if you spend a lot of time making your contours look good, things are going to change, and then you have to spend time making your contours look good. Personally, I don't care what my contours look like. I know there's a lot of people that are very, very anal about their contours, and looking at the drawing that I have in front of me on the screen right now is probably just driving them crazy, right? But I personally don't care, because you shouldn't be designing or building based off of the contour. You should be building based off of the cross sections or the spot elevations or the everything else, right? The labels. But there are a lot of people that think it's important. And so if you do, you can just, draw a polyline, snap to a contour, sketch it out. And then if it's like a natural area, you can double click on it and spline it. Oh, I know, I just pissed a lot of people off there. Right. Splining a polyline isn't a bad, because it is still just a polyline. It just has a lot of extra vertices on it. It is not a true spline. It is a splined polyline. And then you can add that to your surface as a break line or a contour. I'm just going to do it as a break line here. Oops. And now you've got a nice smooth contour there.
It's fine. Blinds, and Brian said he's the devil. Well, come on, he did have a negative 4,000 foot topography earlier, so he was already in hell. He was just precursoring to this.
Right. But the nice thing, again, it's a splined polyline, so you can always decurve it and send it back to just being a regular polyline if you really want to. But I like, for natural areas, I think splined polylines when you're doing contours is fantastic. So contours are a cartoon. Yeah, I agree, Thomas. Yeah, Brian says we are building with bulldozers. I use that saying all the time. We're building with bulldozers. Remember, we're building with bulldozers. We don't have to get Nat's ass on. We're building with bulldozers, goddammit. Sometimes we're building with dynamite, explosives. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to model down to the finest detail, because that's not how they're going to build it.
Well, those are GPS enabled. That means, no, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to come up with an excuse.
When I first started doing design, I was working with a surveyor. He was part owner of the company I was at. And one of the things he told me that I've taken away, and I remember this vividly, he's like, Brian, remember, design it to the 1,000th, stake it to the 100th, build it to the 10th. If they're not going to build it closer than a 10th of a foot, why are you spending so much time designing it down to the 1,000th? So
I was reading a BIM requirement lately, and one of it even said that everything must be accurate to a quarter of an inch, and it explicitly said, including the grading. And I was sitting there laughing, because I'm like, so if a guy walks by and kicks a pile of dirt, you're no longer within the BIM requirements.
Right. Right, exactly. So what else takes time? Setting up the sheets, your symbols, make sure you have a library with all of your symbols in it. So another thing that takes a lot of time is just drawing lines. Setting the layer, drawing the line, making sure it's the right line type. So what we've done, for example, here, we have tool palettes that have our line work on it. So if I want to draw a utility line, right, this isn't even a GEI drawing that we're looking at. This is a really ridiculously old drawing, but I can still draw a storm line on the correct layer. Right, and when I select on it, you can see it's on the correct layer. CU storm pipe. That layer did not exist in this drawing prior to me hitting this button. So I don't have to worry about creating the layer, bringing the layer in. It's there, ready to go. Tool palettes are fantastic. They have all of our symbols on it. Right, so if I want to bring in a land view title, I can bring that in, and it just brings it in, and brings in our symbols for us automatically. Yeah, I highly recommend using tool palettes. List routines. There was a blog, and I don't know if it's still active or not, that was called the Lazy Drafter. And basically the premise of this blog was, you still need to get the work done, but let's get it done as quickly and easily as possible with the fewest clicks. Because I'm lazy. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing this, so let's make it quick and easy.
I was gonna say, the big thing for me is setting up your template with all your styles, and what you just said here is even having these tool palettes, the CUI stuff done, so people aren't oh gosh, I don't have this inside of here, or they just wanted to start and somebody probably started this drawing with some stupid template because they didn't have access to the template or whatever, having
Mhm.
those tools that this is going to put on the right layer, it's going to switch it. Like I used to overwrite the dimension tools, or if somebody went to dimension tool was actually going to my list routine, which would switch you to the correct layer before you did the dimensioning. So even the dimensions went on the right layer, etc. Just things like
Right.
that, I think, become the biggest tool savers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, those repetition, those things you do all the time, that over and over and over again, um, program them, right? Make them, create a list routine that does those things for you. There's I think it's not something I use very often, manage. You have your action recorder. So you record an action that you have to do over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, automate it. A great example of one that we had to do they're vibratory stone columns, and they go under, they're columns that go underneath foundation footings, and a project could have hundreds, if not thousands of these things, and they all have to be numbered sequentially and unique numbers and IDs. And we created a list routine that would do that for us. So I think this one's cool. Let me show this one off to you. So I'm going to throw in just a boring hole here. All right, and this is an attribute, so we'll throw in just some text, doesn't matter, and I'm going to copy this around. All right, and so these are my boreholes, and I want to number them sequentially. So we have a list routine, because this is something we do a lot, that will do an auto number on these blocks. All right, so I select the attribute, and then I select the blocks in the order that I want them to be renumbered. I'm going to use a fence selection. This is not something special for this command. You can use a fence selection anytime AutoCAD is asking you to select objects. So I'll do F for fence, and I select them in the order that I want them to be renumbered. All right. It's going to ask, how do you want to order them? So this gives you the option to do it in the positive X, the positive Y, or in the order that you selected them. So I'm going to use selection order. I want to start at, I don't know, say I want to do even numbers. I know this is going to get more than 10, so I don't want to have just a 2. I want it to be a 0, 2. So I'm going to start at 0, 2. I'm going to increment by a value of 2. I'm going to do a prefix of borehole, and then I go, and I'm done. And I just renumbered 1,000 blocks. Okay, maybe it took me 5 minutes to select them all, but I didn't have to go through and type them all. So those things that you're constantly doing over and over and over and over and over again, learn how to use a list routine, learn how to write a list routine that will automate that for you, or Dynamo, or things like that. Automate things, automate things, automate things. Let's see if I can find it. There was a great XKCD comment. If you're not familiar with XKCD, you really should. XKCD. What was it? If this is it worth the time? Right. And this is a comic, but it's a fantastic, so if you save 1 second on, if you write a program and it saves you 1 second, and you do that 50 times a day, then it's worth spending a full day to create that program, and you will get a return on investment across 5 years on that. All right. If it takes you 5 minutes, right, and you do it 50 times a day, then it's worth spending 9 months to create that program. So this is a great chart. So which one is this? This is 1205. So somebody else put in a 312 as their favorite. I'm going to have to come back and visit that one.
So in your talking there, Robert had asked, how do you get an action recorder macro saved and distributed to other users?
That's a great question. I don't know. I've never really looked into that. So if I record a macro, is there something options for that? I don't know. Action recorder settings. actions, recording file locations. And where do you read them? So it's probably something in here. You just need to make sure they're all going to the same location here. So.
And then I'm conscious where we only have 9 minutes left. So Corey asks, we get drone flown surveys that are terrible to work with, too much data, terrible looking contours, MMS files. Any experience of knowledge on how to make it more user friendly?
It depends upon the data you get, but you can simplify a surface. Right, so this is a data reference. Let me go ahead and promote it real quick because I can't simplify something that's not promoted. Under edits, there's an option to simplify a surface. And again, depending upon the data you get, I don't know if this can be done on a point cloud type surface, but I know this can work on like a DEM. I've taken a surface that had 48 million points and brought it down to 900,000 points using this. And I believe that was a DEM, but this might work for your data. The cool thing is, so I always tell people, you want to keep your surfaces 900,000 points or less. That gets rid of that stupid MMS file, which Autodesk still has, and I don't know why. It's annoying me. I hate it, but it's a thing. But when you do this, you can say, hey, I want to remove this many points. So if you had 48 million points, you want to get it down to 900,000 points, you would just take 900,000 divided by 48, or 48 million divided by 900,000, and that's the percentage you want to get rid of, right? So you would do the math, and it turns out to be like 99.58 or something like that percent of the points. And then it'll do its best to remove those. That surface that had 48 million points that I took down to 900,000 points, I did a volume comparison between them, and 98% of the surface was within 200ths of a foot of each other, or 500 foot of each other. So I feel confident using the simplified surface, assuming it works.
All right, talked about that in previous civil chat. So if you go back and watch previous recordings, I know you talked about that in there as well.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps, Corey. They're a pain in the ass. I agree. I hate them. Again, we're building with bulldozers. I don't need a point every freaking millimeter.
Thomas says they shouldn't be called surveys if they're flown. They're flown data, not surveys.
Right.
And then we have 5 minutes left. So can you talk about styles using layer 0?
Yeah, so using layer 0 in a style is the exact same as using layer 0 in a block. All right, so if I go edit this block, all right, you can see how this line work within the block is on layer 0. And so if it's on layer 0, it's going to inherit the layer that the object is inserted on. Right, so if I take this block here, or rather, more technically, this block reference, and I put it on this layer here, you can see it inherits the properties of the layer that the block reference is inserted on. So that's what layer 0 does. Same thing applies to styles. Right, so if I go edit the style that the surface is using, and I change this all to use layer 0, whatever layer the surface is on, the objects within it are going to inherit those properties. So if I put this on a green layer, right, the contours are green. If I put the surface on a red layer, the contours are red. So that's the concept of layer 0. And then take it a little bit further. Now, go block editor. Right. Within your properties, right, you can see the color set to by layer, the line type is set to whatever it should be, right? But you also have this concept of by block. So if it's set to by layer, it's going to inherit the properties of the layer that the object is inserted on. If you set it to by block, it's going to inherit the layers of the object, right? So if it's set to by layer, it'll inherit the properties of the layer, right? So it's on a But this is actually set to by block now, so it's inheriting the properties of the block. And the block, or rather the block reference, is set to by layer, so it's basically the same. But if I come in here and I overwrite the properties of this, say, hey, I'm going to make this red. So the attribute is set to by layer, whereas the line work is set to by block. So it's inheriting the properties of the block. So hopefully that helps.
Cool. And then just want to point out, we have, a few minutes left, but somebody did also ask, how did you set up your CUI ribbon to activate the tool palettes? I know you've talked about that in several different of the civil
Yep.
chats, and since we only have a few minutes left, I don't think there's time for you to cover that. So
Yep,
Max, if you
basically,
really
it's a
look at
list
that,
routine. But I'll just real quick touch on it. It's a list routine that we use to set the tool file paths. So when you click on the button, it sets those paths for you, and then your tool palettes display. So I don't use groups. I don't use tool palette groups. All right. Anything else?
Scott says use the map clean. I think this is a follow-up to the aerial drone. Use a map clean to simplify import of GIS polylines.
Yeah, that is.
Or any
I
polyline with too many vertices.
Love the drawing cleanup tools or the map clean command. Fantastic.
And then Sean, I think this is a two-part question. When you draw the PL on a proposed base, it automatically assigns an elevation to it where you use the survey drawing as a base. If you draw a 3D PL, I'm assuming it's polyline, unintentionally, do you recommend to provide you the surveyor to give you the survey base data on 2D drawing and avoid using your 3D polylines?
When you draw a polyline in your proposed base, it automatically assigns an elevation to it when you use the survey drawing as a base. I'm not sure what you're getting at, John. So real quick, if I draw a polyline and I just draw a polyline, it's going to be at the elevation 0. Why is it at elevation 0? Because that's what my elevation system variable is set to. Oops. Right, so you can see it's set to 0. If I set elevation to say 5,000, when I draw a polyline now, it's drawn at elevation 5,000. You can, if you look down here at my thing, you can see that this is definitely at elevation 5,000 now, or I'll just lift it. Oops.
I
Right,
think
so
what does he
you can see it's
possibly
at
mean if you have your
5,000.
3D snaps on versus your flat snaps? Like if you accidentally snap during drawing that polyline, would you have an endpoint? Would you be then drawing that polyline, giving me a spaghetti drawing where now it's up at 5,000 feet?
Right. Yeah. So if you're snap, okay. Let me change my elevation back to 0. There's a what is it? O snap Z system variable. Right now you can see it's set to 0. It's off. And if I go into the help for it, basically what it does, try that again. Right? If OSNAP Z is set to 0, the OSNAP uses the Z value of the specified point. So whatever you snap to, that's going to be the elevation that you get. If it's set to 1, it's going to use the value of whatever's in that elevation system variable. Right? So I'm going to draw a polyline, and I'm going to snap to this contour. Right? And if I list it, right, you can see the elevation is 5182. Now I'm going to turn OSNAP Z on. So I'm replacing the Z value of the OSNAP with the value from elevation, which right now is elevation 0. So if I draw a polyline and I snap to that same contour and I list it, you can see the elevation is now at 0. So that might be what you're looking for, Sean. If you turn your OSNAP Z on, then
if it's
all
not,
of your
I want
drawings are going to be
to
at
show
elevation
that.
0.
I think you should just record that and show it in everyone because I get tired of seeing spaghetti drawings every time I get them from a civil engineer. So,
So I don't
know
the problem
you're
is
going
if you're
for,
drawing a
Sean.
3D polyline, you need to turn the OSNAP Z back off so you can actually snap the 3D and then you can turn it on off. And you can create a little list routine that just toggles it back and forth, put it on a button on your ribbon. Or just, OSZ and have it toggle it for you. So,
With that
all
said,
right.
we're at the bottom of the hour.
That's awesome. Thanks, everybody. I will be posting this up on my YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and watch it again, it's there for you. Or if you missed a part of it, look forward to seeing y'all again next month, and y'all have a fantastic day.
Thanks, everyone.